Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhishma Drona Pramukhataha Sarvesham cha Mahi Kshitam.
25.
25 onwards, yes.
Go. 25, yes, thank you.
Sorry, 25 onwards, chapter 1.
Yes, sorry, I was absent-minded here.
So, Bhishma Drona Pramukhataha Sarvesham cha Mahi Kshitam. Uvacha Partha Pashetan Samvetan Kuru Niti.
In the presence of Bhishma, Drona, and all the other chieftains of the world, the Lord said, "Just behold, Partha, all the Kurus assembled here."
Text 26. Tatra Pashyat Sthitam Partha Pitran Atha Pitamahan Acharyan Matulan Bhratran Putran Pautran Sakim Tatha Swasuran Suhardas Chaiva Senyayor Ubhayor Api.
There Arjuna could see, within the midst of the armies of both parties, his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and also his fathers-in-law and well-wishers.
Text 27. Tan samikshaya sa Kaunteya sarvan bandhu avasthitan krapaya paryavishto vishidan idam abravit.
When the son of Kunti, Arjuna, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion and spoke thus.
Text 28. Arjuna vacha drashtema svajanam Krishna yujutsam samupasthitam sidanti mam gatrani mukham cha parishusyati.
Arjuna said, "My dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up."
Text 29. Vepatuscha sharire me roma harsha chajayate gandivam sramasate hastat tvakchaiva paridhayate.
My whole body is trembling. My hair is standing on end. My bow Gandiva is slipping from my hand and my skin is burning.
Text 30. Nacha saknomi avasthatum brahmativa cha me manah nimittani cha pashyami vipiritani keshava.
I am now unable to stand here any longer. I am forgetting myself and my mind is reeling. I see only causes of misfortune. O Krishna, killer of the Kesi demon.
Text 31. Nacha shreyo na nupashyami hatva svajanma have na kangshe vijayam Krishna nacha rajyam sukhani cha.
I do not see how any good can come from killing my own kinsmen in this battle, nor can I, my dear Krishna, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom, or happiness.
Text 32 to 35. Kimno rajena govinda kim bhogir jivitena va yesham arthe kangshitam no rajyam bhogah sukhani cha. Ta ime vasthita yuddhe pranam tyaktva dhanani cha acharya पितरः पुत्रास् तथैव च पितामहः मातुलः स्वसुरः पौत्राः श्यालाः सम्बन्धिनास्तथा एतान्न हन्तुम् इच्छामि ज्ञातोऽपि मधुसूदन अपि त्रैलोक्यराज्यस्य हेतो किं नु मही कृते निहत्या धृतराष्ट्रास्त्रान्नः का प्रीतिः स्यात् जनार्दन.
O Govinda, of what avail to us are a kingdom, happiness, or even life itself, when all those for whom we may desire them are now arrayed on this battlefield? O Madhusudana, when teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, fathers-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, and other relatives are ready to give up their lives and properties and are standing before me, why should I wish to kill them even though they might otherwise kill me? O maintainer of all living entities, I am not prepared to fight with them, even in exchange for the three worlds, let alone this earth. What pleasure will we derive from killing the sons of Dhritarashtra?
Text 36. Papam eva shrayedasman hataytvat tan atatainaha tasmanara vayam hantum drashtran sambandhavan swajanam hi katham hatva sukhani syam madhava.
Sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it is not proper for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of the goddess of fortune? And how could we be happy by killing our own kinsmen?
Texts 37 and 38. Yadi api etena pashyanti लोभोपहता चेतसः कुलक्षया कृतं दोषं मित्रद्रोहे च पातकम् कथं न ज्ञेनम् असम्भीः पापद अस्मान् निवृत्तितुम् कुलक्षया कृतं दोषं प्रपश्यति जनार्दनः.
O Janardana, although these men, their hearts overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, who can see the crime in destroying a family, engage in these acts of sin?
Text 39. कुलक्षये प्रणशयन्ति कुलधर्मा सनातनः धर्मे नष्टे कुलं कृत्स्नम् अधर्मो भिभ्यावति उता.
With the destruction of the dynasty, the eternal family tradition is vanquished, and thus the rest of the family becomes involved in a religion.
Text 40. अधर्मा भिभावत् कृष्ण प्रदूषयन्ति कुलस्त्रियः स्त्रीषु दुष्टासु वर्णेय जायते वर्णसंकरः.
When a religion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the women of the family become polluted, and from the degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Vrishni, comes unwanted progeny.
Text 41. Sankaro narkayev kulagnam kulasya cha patanti pitro hesham lupta pindadokta kriyayah.
An increase of unwanted population certainly causes hellish life, both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. The ancestors of such corrupt families fall down, because the performances for offering them food and water are entirely stopped.
Text 42. Doshair eteh kulagnanam varna sankarkarke utsadayante jati dharma kuldharmascha shashvatah.
By the evil deeds of those who destroy the family tradition and thus give rise to unwanted children, all kinds of community projects and family welfare activities are devastated.
Text 43. Utsana kul dharmanam manushyanam janardana narke niyattam vaso bhavati anushushrama.
O Krishna, maintainer of the people, I have heard by disciplic succession that those whose family traditions are destroyed dwell always in hell.
Text 44. Aho bat mahat papam kartum vyavasita vayam yad rajya sukha lobhena hantum swajanam udyataha.
Alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts, driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness. We are intent on killing our own kinsmen.
Text 45. Yadi mam apratikaram asastram shastrapanyayah dhritarashtrarane hanyos tanme kshemataram bhavet.
Better for me if the sons of Dhritarashtra, weapons in hand, were to kill me unarmed and unresisting on the battlefield.
Text 46. Sanjaya Vacha Evam Uktavarjuna Sankhye Rathopast Upavisat Visajra Sansharam Chapam Shoka Samvigna Manasaha.
Sanjay said, Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Sandeep Prabhu. So nicely recited, very nicely done the Sanskrit. And Pinky Mataji, excellent, very, very clear and very eloquent translation.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. So devotees, welcome once again, those who have joined recently. I'm going to now just share, I'm going to stop sharing this and share the PowerPoint and we can discuss today's verse. There you go, right. So we are now continuing reading of the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, observing the armies on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Incidentally, does anybody know the Sanskrit name of this chapter?
Arjuna Vishad.
Arjuna Vishad Yoga, exactly, thank you. So Arjuna's lamentation, his confusion, all that. But Prabhupada has decided to title this Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. So we just do a short summary of the chapter so far. So in the first text to text 11, we heard about the preparations for the war. We then, from 12 to 20, we heard about the signs of victory for the Pandavas, all the ominous signs. Then from 21 to 27, it spoke about Krishna as the Bhakta Vatsala. And now this current section, which is 28 to 46, we're talking about Arjuna's 5 arguments not to fight. We'll now go on to today's verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, text 42. Doshe rete kula gnana varna shankara karake utsadyante jati dharmaha kula dharmascha shashvataha. By the evil deeds of those who destroy the family traditions and thus give rise to unwanted children, all kinds of community projects and family welfare activities are devastated. So we'll just go to the purport and let's see what we can see here online. Okay, we got Divya Po. Can you just read this purport for us, please, Divya?
Hare Krishna. Community. So you want me to read the purport, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. Community projects for the four orders of human society, combined with family welfare activities, as they are set forth by the institution of Sanatan Dharma or Varnasaram Dharma, are designed to enable the human being to attain his ultimate salvation. Therefore, the breaking of the Sanatan Dharma tradition by irresponsible leaders of society brings about chaos in that society, and consequently, people forget the aim of life, Vishnu. Such leaders are called blind, and persons who follow such leaders are sure to be led into chaos.
Thank you so much, Divya. Thank you. Om Adhyanati Mirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Charu Swami Niti Namine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pashata Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So short purport again, but this is the continuation of Arjun giving all the different reasons why he doesn't want to fight. And in this particular verse, he's once again talking about Varna Shankara. Varna Shankara is unwanted population, as we know already by now. And he's talking about Kula. So Kula Dharma, Jati Dharma, and Varna. So three terms mentioned here: Varna, Jati, and Kula. So just to understand those terms, I know, of course, we have read that before already in this section, but just to reiterate, Varna relates to our mental disposition, I suppose, and our capabilities. So Varna is something that we are born with, and it doesn't necessarily mean where we are born. So we may be born in a Brahmana family, but if our mental disposition is not Brahmanical, then we're not Brahmana. So that we will not, although we were born in a family which was in that Varna, but because of our own attitude and the mental disposition, will be classified as a different Varna. So Varna is our mental disposition, and it's not to do with where we are born. Jati refers to the tribal origin. So in Gujarati, you would say, okay, we are Patels, or we are Lohanas, or we are, whatever. So different. So that would be Jati. And then Kula then refers to the family. So you belong to a particular family. So these are the three terms that Arjuna is using in this text. Let me see if there's anything else we can dig up. So Kula Dharma, yes. So he's saying that because of the Varna Shankara, unwanted population, all kinds of community projects and family welfare activities, which are Kula, which are Kula Dharmas, are devastated. But then I noticed in the text, in the verse itself, the last word is Shashvataha. Shashvataha. So what is the meaning of Shashvataha? Anybody?
Is it eternal occupation?
Yes. Thank you. I think I recognize Palika Mataji's voice. Yes, eternal. Shashvata means eternal. Now it says Kula Dharmascha Shashvataha. So Kula Dharma, that cannot be eternal, isn't it? Kula Dharma is material. So how come it is mentioned as Shashvataha? Anybody has it a guess?
Our Shashvata Dharma is to be a servant of Lord Krishna. So if it is not there, then it's not. I mean, we all need to worship the Lord Krishna.
Yes.
So if it is not, we are not in that situated, then it's not.
It's not exactly.
Categorized as
eternal. Eternal Dharma is
Sanatana Dharma.
Yeah. So yeah. So what? Sometimes you will hear this term, this word Shashvataha, which means eternal. In some verses, you will notice that it's been used for a very, very long time. Just thinking of any examples. For example, 641. 641, Krishna talks about somebody who hasn't finished his spiritual journey in this life, and then what happens to that soul. And he says, 641, Prapya punya kritam lokan ushitva shashvati sama shuchinam shrimatam gehe yoga brasta bijayate. So he says that Prapya punya kritam lokan. So punya kritam means, punya kritam lokan refers to Swargalok, right? To higher planets. So he says, Prapya punya kritam lokan ushitva shashvati sama. So here again, it seems like he's saying eternally, because shashvata actually means eternal. But actually, in the translation, Prabhupada says that he says unsuccessful yogi, which would mean anybody like us who started the journey in spiritual life, but we haven't finished it. So for them, he says that they will take birth in the planets of the pious living entities, which means the heavenly planets. And you will stay there for many, many years. You see, so that is Shashvata, many, many years, although it's not eternal, but it's very long time. And then afterwards, that verse says that then he will come back and take birth in a family of righteous people, like Brahmanas, or rich aristocracy, so that he can continue his journey again. So there you go. So see that term Shashvata, although it actually means eternal, it can be used for something which is very long. Shashvata is another place also, but right now it doesn't come to mind. 2 or 3 places I noticed that. So yeah. And also in another sense, I was thinking that Kula Dharma is, although it is not eternal, but it's also long in the sense that, Kula Dharma continues from one generation to another, doesn't it? Whatever our family traditions are, we carry on, right? Especially in the olden days, the family traditions were going on for many, many, many generations. Nowadays, of course, people have come to the West and they've forgotten all the family traditions. That's a real shame. but traditionally the family dharmas will be carried on for several generations to come. So that is that. Yeah. So you can see here, in not this particular verse, but the series of verses that we've just recently read, it says that Arjuna's got all these very valid reasons. And when you think about it, you can see Arjuna is thinking like a great leader considering not just the material welfare, but the spiritual welfare of his citizens. So from everything that he was saying, you can't really pick a fault. Arjuna is saying, especially in these verses, that what's the point in killing everybody? Then the women will be degraded, Varna Shankara children will be there, and the future welfare of the whole society. In the previous verse yesterday, I think it was Vrindavan Chandra Prabhu who spoke, and he must have discussed about offering pinda to our forefathers and all that. That will stop. Yeah. So yes, all very, very valid reasons. So far we actually, when you start reading the Bhagavatam, you can, up to this point, you're thinking, yes, I'm with him. He's right. But of course, then when we hear Krishna's arguments, then we understand that this is not actually to do with Arjuna or anybody else. This is Krishna's plan. Krishna's plan to get rid of all the papa from all the Kshatriyas who had become too powerful and they were acting whimsically and not acting according to Dharma. So he wanted to create this Dharma Yuddha to get rid of all the papa. And then, of course, Arjuna was convinced in the end to act as per Krishna's will and not as per your own thinking. So now going on to the purport, just a short purport, we'll just read and see what we can dig from there. So Prabhupada says community projects for the 4 orders of human society combined with family welfare activities as they are set forth by the institution of Sanatana Dharma or Varnashram Dharma are designed to enable the human being to attain his ultimate salvation. So the whole process of Varnashram Dharma, and Prabhupada is using it, and also he's calling it Sanatana Dharma. Varnashram Dharma is also Sanatana Dharma. In many lectures, Prabhupada will actually say that the word Hindu doesn't appear in any of the Shastras. Nowhere in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, and all the Vedas, you can search through with a fine tooth comb, you will not find the word Hindu. So our Dharma actually is called Sanatana Dharma or Varnashram Dharma. That is what is our Dharma. So the first question then is, how did this Varnashram Dharma come about? Can anybody throw some light on that?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Palika Mataji.
It's on the basis of Brahman, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Shudra, according to their karmas, isn't it? They're divided into 4 sections.
Yes, but who decided? Who gave that system?
Krishna.
Krishna, exactly. Krishna. And Palika Mataji, or for that matter, anybody else on the group, there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita rather, a very famous verse that talks about that, about Krishna.
Chaturvarna Maya system.
Yes, exactly. 4:13. Chaturvarna Maya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha Tasya Kartaram Apimam Vidya Kartaram Avyayam. So here the translation says, according to the 3 modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the 4 divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet a non-doer, being unchangeable. So the point Krishna is making here is, yes, this Varnashram system is not an artificial system that somebody thought of in the material world. It is something that Krishna himself has put into motion according to the modes of nature and the work, which means guna and karma. According to guna and karma, we fall into Varnashram system automatically. And in the previous times, of course, in the Vedic times, the Varnashram systems were followed very strictly. But of course, in recent times, it's all been lost. And But the point is that the basic principle still remains. Let's see what Prabhupada says in the purport. I've just taken a small part of the purport. Prabhupada says human society is similar to any other animal society. But to elevate men from animal status, the above-mentioned divisions are created by the Lord for the systematic development of Krishna consciousness. The tendency of a particular man towards work is determined by the modes of material nature which he has acquired. So as it says in the purport, that by this system, is designed to enable the human society, enable the human being to attain his ultimate salvation. So the Varnashram system was designed in such a way that it doesn't matter which particular Varna or ashram you're in, if you follow it according to the prescriptions in the Shastras, then you will make progress towards your salvation. And the reason why we have so many problems in the world in terms of spirituality, people have just forgotten spirituality, is because people have stopped following this over many, many years. Sometimes people confuse the Varnashram system with the caste system. The caste system that exists, or that nowadays maybe not so much, but like maybe 50 years ago, the caste system that was existing in India, it is nothing, absolutely nothing to do with the Varnashram system. Some people sometimes say, oh, it is like a shadow of the. No, it's not even a shadow, I would say. Completely man-made and not at all anything to do with the Varnashram system. That caste system was so unfair and completely man-made and very, very discriminating. So let's now look at the system itself. I know everybody here on the call must be familiar with it, but just in case some of you are not, we look at the system. So Varnashram is two words, Varna and Ashram. So Varnas are these. Varnas are Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. So a Brahman class is like the leaders. They are, the decision makers. No, sorry, Brahmins are more like preachers, teachers, and they study Shastra and they preach. And they also actually guide the other three Varnas. So the Brahmanas also guide the Kshatriyas. So that's the Brahmana. And the Brahmana is supposed to be the highest class, the purest of all the Varnas. If sometimes you hear the analogy of the body. So the Brahmanas are the head, the Kshatriyas are the arms, the Vaishyas are the belly, and the Shudras are the legs. So Brahmanas give the intelligence, and in the olden times, the kings, all the Rajas, they used to be called Rajashris because they were not just politicians, but they were also quite spiritual, Raja Rishi. So they would actually, any important decisions, they would consult Brahmanas. And this is why the world ran so nicely in the old days. Before the kings also got corrupted and lost their dharma. But in the real Vedic times, this was the system. There are Brahmanas, the head. And the head is, of course, very, very necessary. It is said that sometimes, okay, if you don't have a leg, if you don't have an arm, you can live. But without the head, of course, nothing can work. Kshatriyas are the ruling sector, the kings and the decision makers. And like I say, they will rule. They will protect. Kshatriya. That word itself means the protectors of the living being, of the citizens. So they give protection from any attacks. But more importantly, in the Vedic days, the Kshatriya's business was, apart from giving protection materially, they would give protection spiritually. So Kshatriya's duty was to make sure the other Varnas are following their dharma. So nowadays, the leaders in this world, they have no concept of that. The leaders are only thinking materially and only generally thinking about their own pockets and their own personal interests. But even if there's a ruler who's very good and who's thinking about the people, he's still thinking about the people materially. He's not thinking about people's spiritual well-being. And as we know, material well-being is fair enough. Yes, it'll last for your number of years you are in this world for, but it is useless in one sense because it'll finish. But spiritual well-being will be your permanent asset. So Kshatriyas, then Vaishyas are there. They are farming, business, creating wealth, and with the wealth they are then also helping the Shudras. They will employ the Shudras, and that way the Shudras make a living, like that. So Vaishya is a very important sector there. And then we got the Shudras. Shudras are people who haven't got the ability to do any business or farming like that. They don't, of course, have the ability to rule like Kshatriyas, and they don't have the intelligence of the Brahmanas. So then for them, it's just serving the other classes, and this is how they make a living. But important thing to note is that in the Vedic times, it wasn't that the Shudras were looked down upon. All the four Varnas were equally respected, and they were all looking after each other, because even the Shudras were very, very necessary for all the menial work. And the Vaishyas and the Kshatriyas and Brahmanas appreciated them equally, like that. Then of course these Kshatriya, these categories, as we said earlier, these categories are not by birth. Again, in the Vedic times, they were more or less by birth, actually. In the Vedic times, somebody born in a Shakta family would automatically develop Kshatriya tendencies for two reasons. The families, especially maybe not the Shudras, maybe even the Vaishyas, but the Kshatriyas and Brahmanas used to follow very strictly all the reformatory processes. So all the, what do you call them? Not yagyas, sanskaras, all the sanskaras they used to follow. So the very first sanskara is actually Garbhadan sanskar. And the Garbhadan sanskar happens even before conception. So that Garbhadan sanskar, that is performed to purify the womb, to invite the right type of soul, right? Well, nowadays, nobody does that. That's why, all different kinds of souls appear in different kinds of families, everything's so mixed up. But in those days, because of the Garbhadan sanskar, a Brahmana would invite a Brahmana soul into her womb. Kshatriya would invite Kshatriyas, like that. So when the children grew up, they would automatically have the tendencies to start with. And then, of course, they would be trained very strictly by their parents in the Brahmanical or Kshatriya fields. So they would be like that. But nowadays, of course, it's not at all like that. And Prabhupada often gives the example. Nowadays, if somebody says, actually people do say, right? People say, well, I'm a Brahmana. Because he's born in a Brahmana family, he would say, I'm a Brahmana. I used to have a neighbor when I used to have a business. So near where my unit was, my warehouse was, there was another business person. He used to do shop fronts and stuff like that. And he was a Brahmana. And very proud of his, I'm a Brahmana. But then on Friday nights, he'd be out with his friends drinking and eating meat and all that. So then, where is the Brahmana? Where's the culture? There's no, so he's not a Brahmana. So Prabhupada used to say this is as absurd as a doctor's son just saying, I'm a doctor. You need to qualify. Then you can be a doctor, but you can't just say, because I'm a doctor's son, I'm a doctor. So yeah, so this is how absurd that is. So these are the Varnas, and then the ashramas. So ashrams are brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. So these are the spiritual statuses, spiritual steps. So it's explained that from birth to around, was it 25? No. Yes, from birth to 25, one would be a brahmacharya. So brahmacharya's duty would be to study well under a qualified spiritual master. And during the brahmacharya stage, they are taught to control their senses very, very strictly. And that teaching of controlling the senses comes into use for them in the later stages of the ashramas. So then, of course, after 25, they're allowed to get married. So that's the Grihastha ashram. So they would get married, and then they have a license for sense gratification. But then, because of their previous training of controlling their senses as a brahmacharya, then when it comes to time for vanaprastha, which generally speaking used to be around the age of 50, you would take vanaprastha. Vanaprastha means by this time your children are grown up, you hand over your responsibilities to the children, and then focus completely on dharma. And husband and wife would practice together. Vana refers to forest. So of course, in the Vedic times, they literally used to go and leave the home and live in the forest. Nowadays, of course, that's not possible. So we would live in the house, but we would be detached from the day-to-day work and everything, responsibilities we give away. And that way we give ourselves more time to study Shastra and perfect our spiritual life. Then comes, of course, sannyas. Sannyas is the stage after 75, where if we are still around, then you would take sannyas, which means at this time you will also leave your wife. The wife at this stage will be taken care of by the grown-up children, and the sannyasi would actually really leave home and completely 100% focus on his future life, his spirituality. And this is the perfect way of then leaving his body. He would definitely achieve salvation. So these are the stages. Now, sannyasa also has got 4 stages. And we have covered this in these sessions before. I've covered it myself. So can anybody remember these 4 stages of sannyas? Okay, so first is Kutichaka. Kutichaka means that in the first stage of sannyas, especially nowadays, I suppose, because you're not used to going away from the family, you would actually live not far from the family. Maybe if it's the village, you would live at the edge of the village, and you would not go home, but your food and necessities were supplied by your family. So you are there, Kutichaka, around the family. Next stage, as you're getting stronger and bolder, then got Bahudaka. Bahudaka means at this stage you refuse also to receive your provisions from the family, but you would go, Bahudaka means go to many, many homes and then beg for your alms. You get your clothes and food by begging. Then comes Parivachak Acharya. Parivachak Acharya means by this time you're really independent and you travel far and wide preaching. You're not roaming around just doing nothing. You're actually preaching. You're approaching families, preaching to families. So that's that. And then the final stage of sannyas is Paramhamsa. The Paramhamsa stage is the highest stage of sannyas, where you are actually very much close to the Lord, and your consciousness is very, very close to pure consciousness. So that is the stages there. The qualities of the Brahmana. We can quickly go and look at the qualities of the Brahmana. These are mentioned in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. We all recently done them. So anybody remember the verses? Which verses are there? It's verses 1842 to 44. Anybody can recite this verse, 42? Somebody's unmuted. Okay, Prabhu Mataji, you're unmuted. You're going to recite the mantra. Is that the shloka?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Shalot Pranam. Shamah Damah Shapah Tapah Shaucham Shantirarjava Evacha Jnanam Vijnana Atikyam Dharma Karma Shobhavajam.
Excellent, very bold. Thank you so much, Prabhu Mataji. Absolutely. So here the translation goes, peacefulness. Remember, these are the qualities of a Brahmana. So if somebody meets you on the street from now and tells you that I'm a Brahmana, look out for these qualities. And if he doesn't have these qualities, remind him that he is not a Brahmana. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. These are the natural qualities by which the Brahmanas work. And the next one, anybody? 43, Kshatriyas. Shoryam tejo dhriti daksham yude chapya palayanam danam ishvara bhavascha kshatram karma swabhavajam. So these are again somebody who says, oh, because for example, I have a friend who actually is born in a Darbar family. So the Darbar is like Kshatriyas. So he would often say, I'm a Kshatriya, I'm a Kshatriya, I'm a Darbar. But then when he comes to some trouble, he's the first one to run away. So heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in battle, generosity, and leadership. These are the natural qualities of work for the Kshatriyas. And the next 144 covers both the Vaishyas and Shudras. Anybody?
Anyone wants to go?
Yes, go for it. Go for it. It's okay.
Krishigo Raksha Vanijam Vaishya Karma Swabhavajam Paricharyatmakajam Karma Shudrascha Ati Swabhavajam.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Prabhu Mataji. Excellent. Very nicely recited. So these are farming, cow protection, and business are the natural work for the Vaishyas. And for the Shudras, there are labor and service to others. So we spoke about that briefly. Next slide is Prabhupada speaking about Varnashram. I think because we're running out of time and I got a little bit more to cover, I'm going to skip that. So Vaishnava is not bound by social classes. This is what I wanted to first explain. Very, very, very important to know this, right? Yes, the Varnashram system is there and is very, very important to follow. But if you are a practicing Vaishnava, then you are above all the Varnashram system. And that is explained by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he was dancing in front of the Jagannath cart in Rath Yatra. And this verse is in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, chapter 13, text 80. Naham vipra nacha narapatir napi vaishya na shudro. Naham varni nacha grihapatir na manastha yatiriva. Kintu prodya nikhila paramananda purna mrittabder gopi bharatu padakamalayo dasa dasa anusasa. Very, very important verse this. So here, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, I am not a Brahmana, I am not a Kshatriya, I am not a Vaishya or a Shudra, nor I am a Brahmachari, a householder, a Vanaprastha, or a sannyasi. I identify myself only as a servant of the servant of the servant of the lotus feet of the Lord Sri Krishna, the maintainer of the gopis. He is like an ocean of nectar, and he is the cause of the universal transcendental bliss. He's always existing with brilliance. So Gopi Bharatu, so one who is a maintainer of the gopi. Padakamalayo dasa, dasa, anudasa. So once you have surrendered yourself to Krishna like that, then we are beyond the varnas and ashramas. This particular verse is actually from Padyavali. These are a set of verses compiled by Srila Rupa Goswami. Beautiful verse. So you can see all the varnas and ashrams are mentioned here, and he says, I'm not. So you see, Naham Vipra. Vipra refers to Brahmana. So Brahmana, we say Brahmana, but there's several stages. As we know, you have Dvija. You have the term Dvija, and then what is it? One more, Dvija.
Dvija Bandhu.
Dvija Bandhu. Dvija Bandhu means, Dvija Bandhu literally means that you are born in a Brahmana family, but you're not a Brahmana. That's Dvija Bandhu. But so because there's that verse, doesn't it? It says, Janmana jayate Shudra, Sanskarat Dvija Uchyate. Veda Pathet Bhaved Vipra, Brahma Janati Brahmana. So yes, so Brahmana, because of the sanskaras we spoke about earlier, you become a Brahmana. But then after you become studied, you become well versed with the Shastra, then you are called a Vipra. So these are like progressions of the Brahmana. And then once you know the Lord, you actually know what is Brahman, then you are Brahman. So that is what is explained in there. So with that, we just go on to the next part of the purport. He says, therefore the breaking of the Sanatana Dharma tradition by irresponsible leaders of society brings about chaos in that society, and consequently people forget the aim of life, Vishnu. Such leaders are called blind, and persons who follow such blind leaders are sure to be led into chaos. So again, a beautiful verse. I have used this verse many times. I like this verse very much. And devotees sometimes repeatedly use verses so that we can all get used to them. Prabhupada used to quote these verses very, very often, so we should also be used to them. This is 7531. This is Prahlad Maharaj speaking to his father, Hiranyakashipu. Nate vidu swartha gatim hi Vishnu, durashayaye bahir arthamanina, Andayata and their upaniyamanas, te pisha tantra urudamni baddha. Persons who are strongly entrapped by the consciousness of enjoying material life and who have therefore accepted as their leader or guru a similar blind man attached to external sense objects cannot understand that the goal of life is to return home back to Godhead and engage in the service of Lord Vishnu. As blind men guided by another blind man miss the right path and fall into a ditch, materially attached men led by another material attached man are bound by ropes of fugitive labor, which are made of very strong cords, and they continue again and again in materialistic life, suffering the threefold miseries. The blind leading the blind. So very, very important. So we need to make sure that whoever we decide to follow, and we're talking about the spiritual path, of course, whoever we decide to follow is not blind. We need to make sure that that person has seen the truth. 434, we say, Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnana paripashnena sevaya upadekshate te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshena. Tattva darshena, the one who has seen the truth, right? If we follow somebody who has not seen the truth, how is he going to save us? Because one who's seen the truth is beyond the modes, and one who's beyond the modes can pull us out from the modes. One who is also tied in the modes, how can he free us? It's like two of us. If both of us are, if two people in a room tied up with ropes, they're helpless. But if one of them is free, he can help the other one to get free. So we need to make sure that anybody we follow, they are free from all the gunas and karmas. Prabhupada actually mentioned one very interestingly. He said that, first he mentioned an analogy. He said the blind man, if the blind man, he wants to go somewhere, it's very difficult for him. He may be very strong and very able physically, but it will be difficult for him to find his way somewhere because of his blindness. But if he carries a lame person who can't walk, but he carries the lame person on his shoulder, the lame person can guide him. Okay, turn left, turn right, go like that. So this is a good combination, right? So that way he can go wherever he wants safely. So he mentioned that Prabhupada said that this Krishna consciousness movement that we are starting in the West, he said is based on this principle. And he says that the West is materially very strong, but spiritually blind. And he says India may be materially weak, but spiritually India is very strong. So he said, what did he say? He said, yeah, if the West could jump on the back, now if the West could carry the Indian spirituality on its back, then it'll be a win-win situation, because they can use the material advancement in the service of the Lord with the help of the guidance of the Indian culture and knowledge. So devotees, I will stop here. Sorry, a little bit over time. I will just invite any comments, questions, and reactions, so reflections and corrections. Padmamani is sitting here next to me, reminding me about corrections. Anybody, any questions, any comments, any realizations?
Hare Krishna. I just wanted to say that, I've joined you for the first time in a very, very long time. And already I've learned so much just in these last 45 minutes or so that I've joined. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Divya. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Jai Shri Mataji.
I really like that analogy that Prabhupada said about if the West is materially strong, carries the Indian spiritualists, because that's exactly what happened, isn't it?
Exactly.
And then because he tried to set it up in India and it didn't work.
Yes,
and he came to the West, and now it's flourishing in India as well as everywhere else.
Exactly.
Really
Because
nice way of looking at it. Yeah.
Thank you, Jai Shri Mataji. Absolutely. That when Prabhupada was, all his efforts in India somehow was not working, but when he came to the West, things started to take off. And then when he went back to India with the Western devotees, then the Indians, because in those days, I suppose a little bit maybe this nowadays as well, but the Indians used to like anything that the West did. Whatever the West did, they wanted to follow. So when they realized, then when they saw all these young Western devotees following Prabhupada, then they started to follow.
Yeah.
That's good. Good, very good point. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Hema Mataji, hi. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for a wonderful class. Prabhuji, based on the inherent qualities that we just talked about from the Bhagavad Gita verses, if one becomes a Brahman through Krishna consciousness and through devotional service, and then kind of weakens in their devotional service, would they come back to their inherent qualities? Would they kind of go back?
Yeah, very good question. So this is the verse I was quoting earlier, where if you have started your journey, doesn't matter where you start from, whatever you have gained, see, whatever we gain materially, doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank, how much property you have around, even your family members, your children, whatever, you have to leave everything behind. We should, I should say we have to leave everything behind. But anything that we have accumulated spiritually, that comes along with us. So that person, if he has started his Brahmanical activities, when he leaves his body, if he's advanced by 20% in this life, he will start from 21 the next life. This is why it says in that verse, and the other place where it also this particular point is emphasized is in text 240, where he says, Neha brikamanasostri pratyavayona vidyate swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhaya. He says, in this endeavor of spirituality, in this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, Krishna says. And a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Right? The most dangerous type of fear, there are two fears. Number one, if you ask people generally what is the most dangerous type of fear, they would probably say death. That's the worst thing people think about. But no, Vaishnavas don't think about death. Vaishnavas are generally not afraid of death. They are afraid of having to come back here. And worse than having to come back here is to having to come back here without any sukriti. So you come back as in a low-class family, right? But if you come with some sukriti, some spiritual benefit, spiritual bank balance, you will then come into a nice family, as we mentioned earlier, and you can continue.
Okay, right. So your qualities, Brahmin qualities, you never lose if you've got to that level.
Absolutely. You never lose them. Absolutely. So there's Garta Mataji, thank you. I'm just reading a question. I very much appreciate a quote from Chaitanya Charitamrita about being of a particular place in the Varnashram system, but being a servant of the servant of the Lord, I find it very liberating consciousness. Yeah, as we can become very entangled and forget that we are spiritual soul. Thank you for the class. Yeah, Garta Mataji, very, very nice point. You see, the point is, when we materially we think about being a servant, if you say to somebody, I'm a servant of somebody, you feel degraded, right? You feel degraded. People sometimes lie even about their positions. They may be working in a very low level office job, but they will say outside, oh, I'm a manager of this department, because they want this. They don't want to be a servant. They want to be the boss. But that's materially, yes. But spiritually, our liberation, this is something I really want to emphasize. Our liberation depends on our surrender to Krishna. So you see, there's a paradox. Normally, when you surrender, you think, oh, I'm giving something up. But our liberation depends on our surrender to the Lord. The more you are surrendered as a servant of the Lord, the more liberated we are. So thank you for raising that, Garta Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much again for the class. Haribol.
Thank you, Garta Mataji. Hare Krishna. All right, devotees, it's coming up to just past 1:45. So if there's no more, we can call it a day. Thank you so much once again for tuning in, like every week, every day. And wish you all a happy evening for the rest of it. Please do look after yourselves. Prabhupada ki jai. Vancha kalpatarubhya sikha sindhu
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Prabhuji,
Hare
thank
Krishna.
you, devotees. Hare Krishna, everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.